I don't go to the local mall very often. When I need something that's only sold at one of those stores there, I make a trip to the mall, and there's something that happens almost every time. Since the store I need to visit is usually at the other end, I have to walk down the main aisle, and as I make my way through the mall, there are stores on my left and right, of course, but there are also now the kiosks in the middle, from one end of the mall to the other. These setups are cheaper than having a full retail walk-in store. And every time I'm walking, there's a perfume dealer. And there will be one or two salespeople trying to flag people down and check out a free sample of some kind of perfume and get you to buy some. They're usually going after the female shoppers, and you can see that women try to walk by and not make eye contact. No one wants to be approached by a salesperson. Whenever I see someone like that, I always think, wow, that has to be the worst job in the world. Nothing but rejection for 40 hours a week. But there are people who do that same kind of thing, and they aren't in the mall. In fact, they aren't even getting paid. It's the Jehovah's Witnesses. I see them all the time with their bookshelf and their literature set up on street corners, in a public park, on the side of a bike or walking trail, just standing there trying to get someone to stop and talk to them so they can hopefully recruit them into joining. Some of them still go out knocking on doors even. Stephan was one of those people. But today, you'll hear how he was finally able to get away from that group and what he lost and gained as a result of that decision. Also, Stephan is part of the team that creates a podcast that I subscribe to, and we'll talk about that toward the end of the conversation. Real people in unreal situations.
There is a girl hanging by her broken leg from the telephone wire.
And I called 911 and I said, I found a baby.
I turned around. I see a gun pointed at me close enough I could touch it.
She would hold our heads on the water all the time.
He levels the gun, pulls the trigger, and I go down.
Her eyes were full of tears. She didn't want to leave us.
My hair catches on fire.
I swear to God, this image is burned in my head for the rest of my life.
I'm Scott Johnson, and this is What Was That Like? You were in Jehovah's Witnesses from a very young age. Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in Germany, in the eastern part, in the late 80s. I moved around a little bit with my parents inside Germany, so I don't really have a hometown anymore, if anybody asks me that question.
And now you are in
Bangkok, in Thailand.
You really get all over the place.
Yeah, I've been living in Shanghai before, even for almost 7 years. So I think Asia is my new hometown.
When you were a child, was your whole family already in Jehovah's Witnesses?
When I was a child, my mom started studying their literature and studying their beliefs. My dad was never a big fan of it. He never joined. But later on, my mom got baptized and she joined the group officially. My parents got divorced. My mom found a new husband, and he is also in the group. Yeah.
When you were a child, I know they've got all kinds of rules. Did you feel different from your friends because of the rules you had to follow that didn't really apply to them?
Yeah, of course. I think the most obvious times were when Christmas. When Christmas times, other children, my friends in school, they would get presents and I would get nothing. Or when there's someone's birthday, for example, my birthday is coming up, people are congratulating me, but I'm like, yeah, thank you, awkwardly, yeah. If they don't know that I don't celebrate this, and also, of course, no presents. Yeah, my parents used to argue with me about the presents. They said, you don't need to have a birthday or Christmas coming up. We can give you presents all over the year, which as a child is more or less acceptable. but still, it's not nice to feel like an outsider, especially in the class,
Yeah, everybody else has that one special day.
Exactly.
Whether it's a holiday or their own birthday.
Exactly.
And you didn't get that.
Yeah.
Were you even allowed to have friends that were not in the witnesses?
That's tricky. Define allowed.
Okay. Well, yeah. What does that mean?
So usually the beliefs or the rules, let's say soft rules of Jehovah's Witnesses, is you're not supposed to have many contact points outside of the group. You should limit your people, your acquaintances, your friends to people inside the group. Of course, when I was a child, I had to go to school, so I tried to make some friends, but my parents were a little bit lenient, I would say. They allowed me to hang out with a few people, vetted people. They knew they wouldn't bring any bad influence on me or any bad thoughts or any bad, situations. That was okay, but for the majority of time, I didn't have many friends in school. Yeah.
Would you say, and I think this is true for a lot of religions, you didn't really choose Jehovah's Witnesses. You were kind of born into it, which is what happens to a lot of people. The religion that they have is the one that their family had.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the same thing with you?
That is true up until a certain point when I consciously decided to join the group myself.
Okay. And how old were you then?
I think I was around 19 or 20. I think 19, yeah. But
at that time, you'd had 19 years of indoctrination, and that was your normal, right?
Yes, exactly. Right.
Is Jehovah's Witnesses a cult?
They would say, of course, no. Yeah, of course. But actually, I prepared the definition here, and it says, according to the dictionary, a religion or religious sect generally considered to be extremist or false, with its followers often living in an unconventional manner under the guidance of an authoritarian, charismatic leader. So I would say some of these parts apply, some of them don't. So it's a very tricky question, actually.
So what part of that does not apply to Jehovah's Witnesses?
I would say extremist. They're not extremists in that sense. They have their beliefs, and they really do believe that this is true, what they're thinking, what they're drawing from the Bible, but I wouldn't call it extremist. Also, I wouldn't say that people are living in an unconventional manner, like somewhere out there in the barn with a group, in a commune or something like that. It's not like this. People have their normal lives, just are secluded from the rest of the world somehow.
Some would look at that as unconventional.
Yeah, I
don't know. I guess it's a gray area,
yeah,
I suppose.
I think so.
But it's also unconventional to, if you're in an accident and you could die and you refuse to take a blood transfusion, that would be kind of unconventional, I would think, too.
That's definitely unconventional, yeah. But here come the beliefs again. So what the Bible says is definitely more valued than what any human doctor says.
And they use the Christian Bible, right? The same book?
They have a different translation, but the core is the same, I think, yeah.
Yeah, because Jehovah's Witnesses is considered a part of the Christian religion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. To take this a little bit further, they believe in God, similar to other Christian religions, and they believe in Jesus as God's Son and in the Holy Spirit. But unlike other Christian, I think Catholics think that's like one person, three different expressions of one person or one entity, but the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that it's actually three different entities.
Yeah, the concept of the Trinity is kind of confusing, no matter what religion we're talking about. And we should mention, too, you have been out of Jehovah's Witnesses for how long?
8-9 years now.
And I know sometimes various theologies can change over time. So what you're talking about today is what you experienced, and maybe some of this has changed a little bit. Do you know of anything that has changed in that time?
No, I don't know anything. But also, honestly, I don't follow anymore what they're doing. I'm happy that during everyday life, I'm not in contact with this anymore.
Enjoying being away from that, huh?
Exactly. Yeah.
What's the core theology?
The core theology, there is one God, there is one Son of God, and there will be an end of the world they call Armageddon. And after this, only the people who believe the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses will survive. The rest will die. And the survivors, they will live in some kind of paradise where they will be immortal and be in peace forever.
And that's here on Earth, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Immortal on Earth. I'm not sure I'd even want to live forever here on the Earth.
Well, imagine you live in a paradise, right? It's not like environment is destroyed as we see today, right? Is everything's green and perfectly in harmony with nature. Even animals wouldn't be any threat to children or to humans anymore in general. So you would basically live in perfect harmony with all the living beings and creatures on this planet. Sounds actually not too bad.
That does sound kind of nice.
Yeah.
I could have a pet elephant if I wanted to.
You could, yeah, you could. Or crocodile, why not?
All right. I'm going to look into this. That sounds interesting. But they believe in heaven, right? Because some people don't stay on Earth forever. They go to heaven.
Yes, that's right.
How do you determine who goes there?
Well, we don't. We humans, we don't. Only God can determine that. But I know what you're referring to. You're referring to those 144,000. That's like an elite group within the followers of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they believe that after they die, they go to heaven immediately. They don't wait until the end of this world to be resurrected or somehow. They go immediately after they die.
But only 144,000. So some of them are already there.
Supposedly, yes. Supposedly.
All right. Yeah, I know we're speaking, all of the questions I ask, they're all hypotheticals anyway.
I don't have a direct line up there,
Right. I looked it up, and there are 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses people worldwide. Yeah. Only 144,000 are going to live in heaven eternally. Yeah. Even that number is less than 2%. And theoretically, since this religion's been around for how long? 100 years.
I think late 18th, 19th century.
Even if it's just today, that's less than 2%. So it's even going to be a smaller percentage than that. So it seems like the people now they really don't have much hope that they're going to be one of those that gets to go to heaven.
Right. So the duty of the people in heaven is like a government. You can imagine like this. So somebody has to reign over the people living on earth in this earthly paradise, and that will be the 144,000 people together with Jesus and God, obviously.
So in order to live in heaven eternally or to be immortal here on earth, you have to, number one, join the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Absolutely.
And number two, and then you got to follow the rules.
Right.
It seems like from what we know of this group, the main rule is to convert others.
Correct. Yeah.
Did you have to do that, or what was your experience with that?
Yeah, of course, everybody has to do that. Yeah. And this is actually a criteria. Without doing that, you cannot even be baptized. You cannot even join the group. Impossible. They won't allow you. Because the key element is to make more followers, to make more disciples. And everybody is supposed to do that.
And how do they structure that? How do they know that you went out on Saturday afternoon and knocked on 50 doors?
You have to report. That's the thing. So at the time when I was in there, I'm not sure if it's the same still today, so take it with a grain of salt. We had to file monthly reports for each person, and we had to write down how many hours we've been out, how many brochures, how many books we distributed, and how many people we revisited, for example.
And it seems like when we see people out doing this, they're always a pair.
Yeah.
And if it's two men, they're usually wearing a white shirt, and they're each riding a bike. Is that kind of a requirement, or
I would say
I don't know, or maybe that's just what I see most often.
Well, there's a little bit of personal taste involved there as well, yeah. But it's most of the people would probably wear a suit and a tie. It doesn't necessarily have to be a white shirt, and it doesn't have to be a bike. You can also drive a car or go by bus, whatever you prefer. But the dress code is formal, that's for sure.
You also have to give them money, right?
You don't have to. It's voluntary, but it is heavily encouraged that you give.
Right, because how else are they going to stay in business? They've got to pay for stuff.
Exactly. I think in the very early days they sold the literature and the books for a small amount of money to people, but nowadays they don't do this anymore. They solely rely on donations. Yeah,
it's bad enough trying to get somebody to open the door and even take that magazine, The Watchtower, but much less trying to sell it to them.
Yeah, imagine
who
that,
would
right?
buy one of those now?
People who have too much money, I guess.
Wow. Okay, some of the restrictions we've talked about: no blood transfusions,
yeah,
no celebrating holidays or birthdays. Is there anything else that kind of stood out to you?
Well, I guess your friend circle is very restricted. And of course, this doesn't only apply to friends, this also applies to dating. So as a young guy like me in my late 10s, early 20s, yeah, I was only limited to girls inside the group, which wasn't very satisfying. Yeah, and not many to choose from, as you can imagine. So it's quite frustrating.
What happens if you don't follow their rules?
There are different levels. What could happen to you? So first of all, other members, they don't want to hang out with you anymore. So it makes you a little bit lonely. Even in the group of loners, you become the loner inside the group of the loners, which is basically the worst. Then the next level is if you do something serious, like for example, smoking, or I don't know, you have a girlfriend and you move in with her, for example, then the thing is you can get disfollowed, and basically they remove you from the group if you don't repent. So there's always the option to have a talk with the elders, basically the leaders of the local congregation, and they can decide upon your faith. If you make the impression on them that you repent and then you break up with your girlfriend and you don't smoke anymore and you don't take any drugs and anything, you basically have a clean slate again, they would allow you to remain inside. But if you keep continuing these things that are outlawed, then they will remove you from the group, because in their argument, it would be protecting the rest of the group from bad influence.
Obviously, there's no way they can keep track of all of the things that people are doing all the time.
Right.
But they encourage members to watch each other.
Yeah, that's true.
How did that work?
I heard the term collective conscience. So basically everybody is entitled to watch out what's happening around them, and if they see anything suspicious or shady going on, to report it, because this is the way they keep the group clean.
Man, so you couldn't trust anyone then?
Well, after a while, you know your people, but you also know who not to trust. That's for sure.
Okay. So there could be a couple of people that agree, hey, we're going to break this rule and we'll both do it, but we won't say anything.
Exactly like this. Yeah. So Friday night, there's the service first, and then you go out clubbing and have a little bit too many drinks, but the next day nobody says anything. So it basically never happened.
Did you ever observe someone else doing something that you had to report?
Oh yeah, I did, and I'm not proud of that.
What was that? What happened?
Yeah, so there was let me guess, how old was I? Probably 15 or something, yeah. And I heard coincidentally that one of the girls in our group had a boyfriend who's not inside the group, and that they slept together. So I basically forced her to report herself to the elders, or I would do it. And even up until today, I regret that, because I was such a snitch. Snitch.
Yeah, but you get that in your head, and I mean, what if you don't? Now you could get in trouble if you knew it and you didn't report it, right?
That's exactly the thing, right? So either I get in trouble or I get somebody else in trouble. So what do I choose? And nowadays, Stephan would say, well, just shut up. And ignore it, right? Let people live and let live. But at the time, I was so brainwashed and I was so into that, into the theory of that, that I thought it's the right thing to do.
That's if everybody just adopted that attitude, just let other people live.
Yeah.
If you got disfellowshipped, or shunned, do they mean the same thing?
I think so. Yeah.
So you lose your friends because now all of your whole community are all part of this group. So you would lose all of your friends. And what about family?
Same. So if you get disfellowshipped, then everybody inside the group is supposed not to have any contact with you anymore. And that also applies for family. So I haven't talked to my parents in probably half a year.
But you've been out longer than that, though. So have they been allowed to contact you to some degree, or they do that like sneaking?
It's a soft rule. Nowadays, it's a softer rule. At the time, it was more strict. I realize it's just now. Yeah, nowadays, it's not that strict anymore, it seems. Every once in a while, we text, hey, are you still alive? Hey, good to hear from you. Something like this. But I don't think anything beyond that.
So there's no relationship there?
Not anymore, no.
That is so sad.
Yeah, it is. But I also understand where this comes from. It's because they want to control the people. They want to control and convince people to stay inside the group, because otherwise you would basically have to restart your life from zero if you leave. Because what happens? You have no friends, you have no family members anymore, so you're basically all by yourself. And this is actually what even somewhere in the Bible it says, to encourage the people to change their lifestyle and come back and join back to the group.
Did you ever deliberately break any of the main rules?
Yeah. I think drinking and smoking. Yeah.
Okay. But you feel safe talking about it now, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody does it at some point. You just have to repent and then you're good to go. Some people repent more than once.
You're hurting your chances of living in paradise forever.
And I'm going to hell. This ship has sailed a long time ago.
Okay.
Nah, I don't believe in hell.
It seems like the whole thing, people are stuck with following all these rules, but the fundamental incentive is just fear. Would you say that's accurate?
It's carrot and stick. Not only fear, it's also carrot and stick. Because you have that carrot that dangling in front of your nose, and then you go to paradise in a million years, maybe, if it even happens. But the perspective or the expectation, or no, the anticipation of being able to live in a paradise forever, immortal, that's probably good enough for some people to give up their entire lives and their entire personalities.
If you were an active Jehovah's Witness, what would you be seen doing each day of the week?
Okay, so we already had going from door to door. That would usually happen Saturday mornings, for me at least. Of course, you can go whenever you want, but there were regular meetings Saturday mornings, which I have to add is not convenient if you went out drinking the night before. And yeah, you would go for 2 hours, or sometimes what I did, I just sat in the car trying to get to survive somehow, and just didn't go out at all. But that's another topic. And the rest of the week was heavily impacted by the schedules, Jehovah's Witness schedules. So, for example, Tuesday evenings there was a meeting. Friday evening there was another meeting. Services, right? Sunday morning another meeting. Later on, shortly before I left, I think they abandoned the one on Tuesday, so it was only Friday and Sunday services. But still, whenever you have spare time, whenever you can arrange it, you were supposed to preach and to try to convert other people.
I guess they figured if you were at the Friday night service, then it was safe to assume that you were okay to go out Saturday morning and walk around a neighborhood, knock on doors.
You could say that, but the thing is, the service was from 7 p.m. to maybe 8:30, around that.
Well, you got done early.
Enough time to go crazy after that.
They got to figure that out. They need to have the service go till midnight or something. And
Oh no, please don't give them the idea.
And then you had homework. What
Exactly.
What was the homework like?
Yeah, of course, for all these services, you have to prepare, right? So for the Fridays and the Sunday services, there were different literatures to be prepared. And ideally, you read those during one of the other evenings. So what happened was my parents decided Saturday afternoon they would prepare for the Sunday service. So we would sit around and just read the literature, try to understand what is basically same, but different every single time. And try to prepare some answers. So because the service would look like this, somebody would talk about the material on stage and then would ask the questions that are printed in the literature, and people would raise their hands and try to answer the questions that are basically written in the magazine with their own words.
Now, I got to go back to what you said earlier. You're not supposed to have a girlfriend that's outside the group.
Right.
But when you were young, your mom joined Jehovah's Witnesses, but your dad did not. So did the church say that she was supposed to divorce him then? Or how did that affect their relationship? Obviously, they eventually were divorced, but was that why?
That was not related. No, that was not related. I only remember parts of it. Yeah. So I hope I can piece this together. When I was a baby, my parents were already married. But my mom got in contact with Jehovah's Witnesses, and she was interested to continue this path, but my dad was not. But since marriage is like a holy sacrament, I would say, they wouldn't force them to divorce. My mom was supposed to respect my dad, and my dad was supposed to do nothing, which he did. So he was fine. He was tolerant. He didn't like it, probably, from what I know, but he accepted it. And my mom tried to raise me within the group.
It's interesting. The Jehovah's Witnesses calls themselves a Christian denomination, but if you went to any person who's a Baptist or a Catholic, for example, they would say, "No way, they aren't Christians."
Yeah,
but they use the same Bible, just a different translation. What's the name of the translation?
New World Translation. New World as in paradise.
I hadn't heard of that one. That's not the one. That's not a translation that most Christian religions would use.
It's their own translation, yeah. According to Jehovah's Witnesses, this is the most accurate transition you can get your hands on.
Of course.
Right.
Mm-hmm. What happened that made you first start to think, maybe I don't belong in this club?
I'm a kind of person, I don't like standstill. I need development. I need something new. I need to have a new challenge, whatever. But the thing is, you cannot do much inside. The only thing that you can do is go and try to convert people. If you have many hours in your monthly report, then maybe somebody will look at you and will say, "Hey, look at this guy. He's doing a good job. Let's promote him." So inside the group, there are different levels you can call like a career path. And the highest one is basically an elder controlling or overseeing the local congregation. So that would be the way to go. There are some other career paths you can take, but there's not much to do. But the thing is, in my case, I wanted to do something. I want to develop myself further. But inside, there was not much to do because I hated going out and knocking on strangers' doors, So I was thinking maybe I should try my luck outside. Maybe I should go study and learn an actual job and have an actual career. And then, sooner or later, I realized that outside, in the real world, I want to say, there are many, many more opportunities than inside.
And how old were you when you realized that?
Probably 25.
But didn't you already have a job or any kind of a career at that point? What were you doing?
I did. I studied mechanical engineering, and then I worked in the automotive industry as an engineer, just something normal. But I can't even say that there was a single incident that made me realize I don't want to be in the group anymore. It's just a development, a transition. It took a while.
It's a process.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're leaving something that you've known your whole life.
Exactly. It's not easy.
Probably kind of scary.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially if you know the consequences, right? You're basically going to start your life from zero.
So what was the actual process for leaving? What was the first thing you did?
Simple. Write a letter, put it in the mailbox, and then never talk to those people again. That's the easiest part.
But that's after you've gone through the whole thought process that maybe I don't, sure, and then, okay, I definitely want to leave.
Yeah.
But that can take, sometimes that process can probably take years.
Yeah, that took years. And I also have to thank my wife at the time. I used to be married before. And we talked about this often, a lot, leaving or staying. If we stay, what are we going to do? If we leave, how are we going to start over again? And at some point, we were both, I don't even know who took the lead there. We were both under the impression that it would be better to leave, no matter the consequences. So we both wrote letters and signed them. Hello, this is my name. I don't want to be in there anymore. Don't contact me. I'm gone. Bye-bye forever.
Not even a 2-week notice.
Not even that.
Did anybody contact you saying, "Hey, wait a second, let's talk about this"? They tried to get you to stay in.
Normally they would do that, yeah. But if you make it very clear in your letter that you don't want to be contacted, there's no room for negotiation anymore. Then the last messages I received, I still have screenshots of those messages actually, are like, "Okay, sad to see you go. Wish you all the best, and you can always come back if you feel like." I'm like, "Thank you, but nope."
And you were at that time 27?
Yeah.
Did you immediately lose all those friends and your family?
Yeah, exactly.
So how did your life change at that point? For the good or the bad?
Well, I think for the bad, already I mentioned this, yeah, you lose everybody that you know. But on the other hand, I'm quite outgoing. So for me, it's relatively easy to make new connections. I built a new friend circle, small but reliable. And at that time, there was also the time when I was supposed to leave Germany for a new job opportunity in China. So basically, I didn't lose too much anyway, luckily.
So the transition for you may have been a little bit easier than it is for some other people.
Exactly. So I had to build a new friend circle anyway. It doesn't really matter if I do this in Germany or in China later on. Roughly the same time, I also got divorced from my ex-wife. So basically, I cut 3 different strings of my life and then started new.
That's some major life events, especially when they all happen at the same time.
Yeah, within 2-3 years.
So at that point, did you just start celebrating birthdays and holidays, or what kind of adjustments did you make?
That's funny. The only thing that I actually celebrate now is birthday. I don't have any connection or any feeling about Christmas or Easter or any of these things because I've never experienced these festivals in my life. But birthday is usually a big party with my friends. That is an escalation.
Obviously, Christmas and Easter are religious holidays, so that makes sense. But what about something like Halloween?
Halloween, absolutely. Yeah, I usually dress up. That's something that I really enjoy nowadays. I don't know why, but it's fun. Like once a year, come up with some insane costume idea and then go out to some party and then compete with other like-minded crazy people.
Yeah, because as a kid, you couldn't do that, right? You couldn't dress up. You couldn't go around collecting candy or anything like all the other kids did.
Nowadays, I don't collect candy. I collect drinks, but that's almost similar.
You've turned into quite a heathen here, it sounds like.
Yes. You can say that.
And it's almost like you're proud of that.
All 180 degrees change. Yeah. It's not easy, but I made it.
What's your favorite thing you do now that you couldn't do before?
I don't have to think about anymore what would my fellow witnesses think if I did this or that. So if you always have to consider other people's conscience, if you drink too much or if you go out too late or if you don't bring in your monthly hours that you have to report, then you constantly have a bad conscience. You feel bad. And this is one thing that is really, I don't even know how to say it, so freeing. I feel so free. I can only do what I want to do, and I don't have to justify my actions towards anyone anymore. This is amazing.
To constantly think, wow, I'm not such a bad person.
Right?
Right?
Yeah. Self-acceptance comes first.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it was Mark Twain that said, it's easier to trick someone into joining a cult than it is to convince them they're already in one. Is there some way to get people to recognize that they're in a cult, or do they even care if they are?
I would say it's very, very difficult, especially if someone has been brainwashed for years, like me at the time. It's very difficult to open people's eyes to the reality that they're being controlled and maybe even a little bit exploited for their money and for the time. But you can also argue that people get something from it, right? You get something out of it. You get companionship. It's conditional, but you have it. So if you have no other friends and no other opportunities to meet with people or to support each other, then you get this. You just have to stick to the rules. So you get the companionship, you get some kind of feeling of belonging, I would say, and you get an organized life if you just follow their schedule. You don't have to think too much.
That's the price you pay for, because that's one thing that church does, any religion pretty much does pretty well, is the idea of community. You know, you feel like you're part of something. And if you're in the hospital, people will set up a food drive and help you out and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's difficult to get away from that.
What my family experienced more than once is when we moved from one place to the other, there would always be people help us pack everything into the truck and then to help us unpack again, even though we hadn't seen these people ever in our lives before, but they would be there because we belong to the same group.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you say that, it makes me think of the Amish people. Like if somebody's barn burns down, the next day the whole town is there and build them a new barn that same day.
Yeah,
even though they don't even know all those people personally.
That's right. Yeah, the companionship is really strong inside the group.
How can you support someone who's trying to leave, or maybe just starting to question or doubt?
Me personally, or generally speaking?
Yeah, generally speaking. If someone's listening to this and they know someone who's a witness, but they're starting to have questions and maybe think this might not be where I should be, what should someone do or can you do anything to support them?
You can not force anybody. You cannot push, that's for sure. This realization takes time. And especially because of this thought process, right? What am I gaining? What am I losing? Everybody needs to evaluate, is it worth it for me personally? So on the outside, you and me, we could not influence or force anybody to do anything. Impossible. But if somebody feels that they, for example, outgrown this community, or something feels not right, like they're being restricted or whatever, then it's time to do some research online, talk to their mental health professional in the area, or even reach out to former members like me or any other people they could find online.
And if someone does want to reach out to you, we're going to have your email address in the episode notes so anybody can contact you if they want to, and I appreciate that. You must look at Jehovah's Witnesses, or maybe you're out driving around and you see someone going door to door and you know who they're with. Do you just think, man, I am so glad that's not me anymore?
I do. Happened to me a while ago in Hong Kong. I was walking across the city and I saw them standing there in the pedestrian zone with those little foldable shelves trying to get attention from the passersby. And I was like, wow, this could have been me right now. Man, I'm so glad. I'm so happy. Exactly what you said. Such a good feeling to not be obliged and to be pressured into this kind of situation anymore.
You could be standing there in the hot sun trying to flag people down and convert people. We have them right here in my little town. I bike past them almost every morning. They're always on the same corner. They got their bookshelf with the literature and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Why do you feel it's important to tell this story?
Exactly for the reason that you just mentioned. I believe that it's not healthy to be restricted all the time, to follow other people's logics and other people's beliefs. And I wish that more people have the courage to break free from these chains, to define their own lives just like we did it, we, the people who left the group, and that they can live a better life.
And you did. You had the courage to do that.
Yeah, it was tough.
All right, before we close, I want you to talk about the podcast that you work with. I know it's not your primary job, but you work with a podcast that I subscribe to and listen to called Multispective.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about that, what that is?
So Multispective is a storytelling podcast just like yours. We have also people in, let's say, unusual situations or with unusual experiences. For example, people who went to jail even though they were innocent. Or we had one guy who had a brain surgery and then for some reason couldn't feel any fear anymore. Or we have people who broke out of toxic relationships. Basically, almost everything that you can see in this world, but you'd never hear about. So recently, the majority of topics are about a little bit more about spirituality and mental health. But it really depends.
Okay.
It really depends on the guest. Yeah.
And you're not the host of that, but you work on that show.
Right.
The host is Jenica, and I just love listening to her because I identify with her so much because she is so compassionate and empathetic to her guests. She really makes it a safe space for people to come on and tell some traumatic stories.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we'll have a link to that as well. But again, the show is called Multispective. And I assume, I've never asked her about this, but I guess that's just because you want to get a multiple perspectives on life, different people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a great way to describe it.
So we believe that everybody has their individual perspective on life with individual experiences, and this is the platform to tell their stories in a nutshell.
I am so happy that you were able to get away from that group. And is there any part of this that we haven't talked about that you want to mention?
I want to mention the reason why I actively joined the group. I mentioned briefly before I was around 19. So basically I was brought up in this group, but only when I was 19, I decided to get baptized and then officially became a member voluntarily. So that was actually the reason, the bad influence, right? At the time, I was bad influence to a girl I fell in love with. So the thing is, I wanted to be with her, but her parents didn't allow because I was not baptized yet. So I was not a member of the group. So they forbade her to see me. So I was like, okay, shit, what can I do? Maybe this is the way to go in order to get together with her. Yeah, so very pragmatic approach, right?
You had some incentive there, yeah.
I did. So what I did is I really struggled a lot, and I put all my efforts into getting the numbers right, making more hours, and becoming like a good follower and everything. And then at some point I got baptized, and then a few years later we got married, and that was the reason why I was married so early when I was 22.
And that's the one that you divorced from eventually.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you think because the marriage was more based on, I really have to work to get this girl, as opposed to maybe if she was in love with you, maybe she would have left Jehovah's Witnesses to be with you? Did it start off a little bit like unstable that way?
Honestly, I've never thought about this scenario, but I think in her shoes, she wouldn't have done that because she was young. She was 20 at the time when we got married, and she didn't go to all this thought process. Of course, I cannot really speak for her thoughts at the time, right? But I don't think she would have left. She would rather have left me or ignored me than the group, I think.
Yeah, I mean, from her standpoint, okay, I could be with Stephan, I could live forever. I don't know, which one should I choose?
Yeah, of course, everybody should choose me, obviously.
Big thanks to Stephan for coming on and telling his story. It really does take a lot of courage to step back and reevaluate stuff that you've been taught your whole life since childhood. And especially to say, yeah, I don't believe it anymore. You can see a picture of Stephan and get a full transcript of this episode at the episode notes, which are at whatwasthatlike.com/187.
Hey, Scott, this is Kelly out in Hood River, Oregon. And I'm doing a bunch of cooking today while we were getting ready to go camping. And I found your podcast, and I have kind of been getting stuck on the same podcast that I like. And I came across yours today, and it was Casey that I picked. Casey and Henry is the one I picked today for my first ever. Loved her story. She's an amazing woman, and I love their story. That was just really cool, and really liked what she had to say. And I didn't know about her, and now I can look her up on her website and research her and what she's doing for women. And so I appreciate you having her on there and having her on there again. And I really like your website. I mean, your podcast. I'm sorry. I love your podcast. So I'm going to keep listening, and I'm going to check out your Facebook page because I have the most disgusting thing I've seen at somebody's house, and I'm going to post it. So anyway, Scott, cool. Thank you. Carry on. Bye.
And you can call in a voicemail to the podcast anytime, day or night, at 727-386-9468. You've probably heard me talk about the extra bonus episodes that are available to supporters of the podcast. Those episodes are called Raw Audio, and they include the actual 911 emergency calls that happened as part of a story. You can get all of those extra episodes by signing up at whatwasthatlike.com/plus, or on your iPhone, just click on Try Free. And the newest Raw Audio, episode 43, is now live. In this episode, you'll hear about a random shooting.
Asking if he's breathing. Is he breathing? No breathing.
5 children being rescued from a house fire.
Are you out of the house yet?
No.
All right, get out of the house.
We can't.
And a woman who was trapped inside a car wash.
This is ridiculous, but I am on 24th Street in a car wash stuck inside.
All 43 Raw Audio episodes are available to binge immediately after you sign up to support the podcast, and I appreciate it. Graphics for this episode were created by Bob Bretz. Full episode transcription was created by James Lai. And it's listener story time. This is where one listener tells a story for all the other listeners to hear. If you have one, record it on your phone and send it to me at scott@whatwasthatlike.com. This one is about a walk in the woods and needs a content warning for sexual assault. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
Do you believe God has a sense of humor? I do. I've seen it a lot of times. The one that stands out for me the most was when I was back in college. I went to a small liberal arts college, and there was a park across the street, and I had a major crush on a guy. Back in those days, the men made the first move. I tried my hardest to flirt, but it didn't seem to be getting me anywhere. And so I just felt that I was never going to find a mate. I felt that I was not attractive, and I was becoming very disheartened. I decided to take the afternoon off and go for a walk in the park. I was walking through the park, and I was talking to God. And I told God, give me a sign, give me any sign that I'm attractive to men. And I got no response, and I frankly did not expect to hear one. But I kept walking through the park and kept praying and thinking. And before long, I came upon a man who was standing on a bridge and looking at the stream that flows through the park. He said, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And he looked at me and he said, "Have you seen where the stream and the river come together?" And I said, "No." And he said, "It's beautiful. Would you like to come and look at it?" I said, "Sure." I was very naive at the time. So, of course, I said I would go with this complete stranger into the woods and look at the river and the stream coming together. So we went down a long path through the woods. And as he walked, he pointed out various trees and flowers to me. And he told me what they were called. One tree in particular was full of 3-inch spikes. It was very intimidating. And he asked me if I knew what it was. And I said, no. And he said, "It's a hawthorn tree." And of course, being an English major, I had heard of hawthorn, but I had no idea about the tree. And he plucked one of the thorns off of it and handed it to me. And it was pretty. It was a shiny, mahogany-colored, 3-inch, very sharp, pointy spike. And I held it in my hand, and we kept walking. And before long, we ended up at a clearing. And when we got to the clearing, you could see the stream emptying into the river, and it was, as promised, beautiful. So we stood there for a while looking at it, and then he turned to me and he started to kiss me and to hold me. And then he said 3 words to me. He said, "Do you fuck?" Well, at that instant, everything changed. I was thrown into a panic. What had I gotten myself into? Here I was out in the middle of nowhere, miles from civilization, with a man I didn't even know. And he was asking me this. I freaked out mentally. I choked out a barely audible no. And he proceeded to grab my boobs and grab my butt and continue to kiss me. And I froze up. And after a bit, the panic just started to subside. And I was able to think a little more clearly. And the only thing I could think to do to get myself out of the situation was to start pushing his hands away. I finally got my voice back and I said, "Let go of me." And as I said that, I was pushing his hands away, and that sharp spike found his flesh and he yelped. And the pain brought him back to his senses. He apologized to me and stopped what he was doing. And then he started walking me back to the park. We retraced our steps in complete silence. And all I could think of was how dumb I had been to put myself in that situation to begin with. And finally, when we got back to the bridge, he pointed out his pickup truck to me. And he asked me if I wanted to go with him. I said no. And he said okay and started to walk away. And I turned and started to walk away. And a minute later, I heard him call out to me, "Debbie?" I turned and looked. And he said 3 words to me. You are beautiful. Holy crap. I guess God really does have a sense of humor.